that leads us to the Q&A session. We have asked the audience to send some questions during the week, and we have chosen 2 of them. Please feel free to answer them. They are very broad, and I believe that you can answer, if you want to, answer from your area of expertise. The first question, if home quarantine is not viable in the long run, what other alternatives could be implemented? Who would like to answer that one?
So in the judicial system, I think many other countries in Latin America are already doing that. And for example, Colombia is having court sessions virtually. And for domestic violence, some countries are having teleconferences. So let's say the process is still going. Also some other judicial processes via online sessions. And Mexico also declared a decree to guarantee continue essential services, and especially for gender-related agenda, this has been guaranteed as an essential service. So I think the main challenge is what to do with the people who don't have access to internet or who don't live in the city, and how can we approach the judicial system to them if they don't have access to such services. So I think that's one of the things that Mexico is already doing, but we need to come up with alternatives to have a solution to that.
Thank you very much, Martha. I don't know if anyone else would like to add something to this question.
I mean, if that's okay, I can just come up with a couple comments.
Okay.
So it's understandable not everyone can do home quarantine for sure. And so my answer has 2 components. The first one is, if you can do home quarantine, please do it, because that helps a lot. This flattening the curve business, and it's not only on the cases, but on the burden to the healthcare system. If then that's not possible, and you have to be out and about in your activities because you cannot just stay at home, which is completely understandable, it is important to maintain social distance, hygiene, and try to reduce those contacts that could potentially lead to an infection. Even though some of these mitigation strategies can be lifted, it is very important to continue with this hygiene. Be conscious that the epidemic is not over. It's not over almost anywhere in the world. So it's very important to, if you can stay at home, reduce your contacts in any way you can. That's what is very important to do. And I don't know if this question was related to as a policy one or more as a personal. So I try to just respond as an individual. What can we do? And it's very important that the collective action from individuals can help a lot mitigate and reduce the potential negative consequences of this epidemic.
Thank you. Javier, do you want to say something?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to address also the other situations that are coming up, as well as the health problem is on us in Mexico, that we are facing the consequences of these first episodes of the pandemic, and different instances of the government and in the social sector and in the private sector are understanding, I think, but we need to promote it more. We need to spread it more, that things are not going to come to normal after this quarantine ends. And there are a lot of things that are going to change in our normal, or in our new normality, in our new ways of facing this reactivation of the economy. So I would like to point, for example, these documents that we are promoting from, for example, the National Council to Eradicate Discrimination, about the relationship that should be promoting and the acts that should be eradicated of discriminations with people that have been in contact with COVID-19 or who had a familiar, a relative that were in contact with this disease. So this needs to be adopted in institutions, in public institutions, but also in corporations, in the schools, and these the hygienic measures that they were told just minutes before will be complemented with these other measures about our relationship and our empathy with people that have been suffering the most with the COVID. We haven't talked about a lot of other people that are suffering, but we also have the migrants in Mexico that haven't been attended, I think, in the most correct way in the first part of this pandemic. But there are like a lot of measures that have been reconsidered to help them. Not only the ones that are in transit in Mexico, but also the ones that are being deported from the U.S. because the U.S. has not stopped to deport people in this pandemic. But we're also talking about people that are in treatment, in mental illness, kids, no, that needs to reactivate their school formation. So the strategy is not only about eradicating the public health problem, but to make us reactivate also our projects of human rights protection, the problems of development that we are facing now, and the strategy is also going to take a lot of measures that are complementing this hygienic and the staying home ones. No?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think from a social protection perspective, it would be perhaps advisable to continue and perhaps expand the cash transfer programs, because it reduces the need for people to directly go out onto the streets and do their jobs and use things like public transport, etc. So while it is not an alternative to home quarantine, it can make home quarantine more, or it can prolong the duration for which home quarantine is viable. So I think that is extremely important, especially because cash transfers and social protection tend to be a relatively cheap way of delivering support to people, because the infrastructure, especially in Mexico, is already there to do it. You don't need a lot of additional resources to transfer larger pensions or other social contributions to people. So it is relatively low intensity, but it can make a great deal of difference for people. At the same time, you could think about how you can transition or change existing programs such as school meals to things like take-home meals or food vouchers, because especially in a lot of the poorer areas, many people rely on school meals in order to get good nutrition and to get sufficient food. So if you want people to stay home, you have to think about the implications of them not being able to access things like nutritious food anymore. So you can perhaps adapt existing programs to make it more viable to reduce social interaction.
Thank you, Roland. The second question is, what are the factors that might influence a larger impact of COVID-19 in Mexico? Again, this is a broad a question that could be also answered from your areas of expertise. Thank you.
Okay, I will start off saying that one of the biggest factors is that we don't have first responders trained on psychosocial health. So we need to address that. Not only like first responders as police, but also in the health sector. So we would need to invest a lot of effort in training for first responders. Also, we have a high level of violence even before COVID-19. So this just exacerbates everything. And what we talk about, the informality of our economy, and with 50 million people living under poverty, this just makes it harder for us to have like a good comeback after COVID-19, the access to internet, and also in terms of the statistics, I think we need to have more sex disaggregated data in terms of to see how much the impact of the interventions of public policies is and how it affects women for better or for worse. And also what I'm worried about is that if Mexico decides to come back to normality too soon, many households depend solely on the woman. So if we go back too soon, they have to go back to work, and then the children, if schools are not expected to go back until August, then who will be the care providers of those children? So that would be my intervention.
Thank you, Marta. I don't know if someone else would like to answer this question. Javier?
Yeah, there is a factor that we didn't talk about it in this session, but in Mexico we are facing also the complexity of the federalism, this relationship between the local governments and the federal government, because, well, there is so much information, there are so many studies, there are so many points of view in this topic. Even if the health department has like a clear statement about the measures they are taking off and why they are taking them, we have a lot of states that have taken like their own initiatives to understand the pandemic in a different way. And maybe they can have positive effects on their states. I need to recognize that every state in our country is different. No, the economic conditions of one of the states will be really different from another. But it also sometimes makes it difficult to give a correct development of the strategy. No, so we have a document of the High Commissioner of the Human Rights, and the Secretary of Government in Mexico that has expressed the preoccupation, the worries about the human rights violations of the local strategies and how they are exceeding in the privation of human rights or in the limitations to human rights and liberties by trying to address the coronavirus situation in their own cities. So the national government has expressed that we are going to maintain respect of all the human rights, and try to not enter to these kind of measures that are more restrictive, no, to appeal to the stability and the social compromise of people. And I think that's a correct strategy. But in some cases, we have faced it with mayors and governors that are trying to do it in another way. So definitely that is a factor that is we need to have a really good relationship between the states and the federal government and the cities to stop the mitigation of the disease. No.
Thank you very much. I don't know if someone else would like to contribute. Okay, Fernando.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just talk from the epidemiological side. What could influence a larger impact of COVID-19 in Mexico is always a question whether if you lift mitigation strategies too early or too soon. And there are consequences. There are going to be consequences of doing that, perhaps positive and also negative consequences. So what is very important, I think, is to really that authorities show what are the quantification of those consequences. So what's going to happen in all these factors, economic, social, and health attributes, when based on the decisions they're planning to make. Just is very transparent what we expect to happen. For example, if we lift them in 2 weeks, in a month, what could potentially happen to the economy by doing that, and also on the health side? What happens if we do it 3 months from now or in a week from now? So it's very important to show not only what happens with COVID, but also the effects on the other attributes or factors. So, and when we talked about the impact of COVID, it's also very, very important to be clear about it could have an impact on multiple domains. So just have a sense of all these different domains that are relative to decision makers and the population is very important.
Okay, thank you, Fernando. Roland?
Yeah, I think I just want to build on and echo basically what Fernando was saying, is that while in this talk we mostly focused on the COVID-19, I think the impact can be potentially very large on the people who will lose their job as a consequence of the current situation. And that might have knock-on effects on a lot of other areas. So it is important that even though now we're planning and designing the response to COVID-19, to already look at what's going to happen down the line and what mitigation strategies, such as leveraging social protection, can be put in place to prevent the worst outcomes. Because typically the ability of the poorest and most vulnerable groups in society to recover from shocks like this is the least. So well-educated people in an urban environment with economic opportunities might be better able to return back to their pre-COVID lives once the epidemic is reduced. But for people who have had to sell off their productive assets, who had to not go to school or whatever because they have to work for an extended period of time, there might be much longer term implications that go way beyond the health implications. So I think that's just something to already start factoring in the way we design the response. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. With this, we conclude the academic talk. I would like to thank our wonderful panel and also the audience that have listened to us today. I would like just to briefly say that we are going to continue delivering academic talks. So please stay tuned. I share our social media. And thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a nice day.